For months, the United States and Iran operated on a dangerous edge. A heavy military footprint crowded the region, and the threat of an expanded kinetic war felt imminent. Then, the momentum abruptly stopped. A sudden shift in U.S. foreign policy pumped the brakes on what looked like an inevitable clash. The directive came straight from the top. The former president reversed course, completely withdrawing his previous public threats of military action against Tehran. The administration framed this as a deliberate strategic choice. They elected to actively de-escalate the conflict rather than risk expanding a regional war. To justify the pivot, they broadcast a bold claim to the world. A comprehensive peace agreement between the two nations was, in their words, nearly finalized. But this raises an immediate contradiction. If a peace deal is truly finalized and the threat of war is off the table, why is the physical paperwork and the formalized treaty entirely missing? To understand what is actually happening, we must look at where this de-escalation is taking place. It is not occurring at a negotiating table, but behind political press podiums. Governments often use highly optimistic public statements to outpace actual diplomatic progress. It is a calculated move designed to calm anxious domestic audiences and stabilize jittery financial markets. This tactic is known as verbal de-escalation. Instead of implementing structural policy changes, leaders hit pause on hostilities purely through media signaling and public addresses. When these statements are broadcast, the public and the media absorb them as concrete facts. A promise of peace is easily mistaken for actual peace, prematurely creating a false sense of security. Ultimately, a domestic press briefing is built to manage internal perception. No matter how confident the delivery, those words carry absolutely no legal power to bind a foreign adversary like Iran to a lasting peace. Pacing slows slightly, grounding. While the public announcements moved at the speed of a news cycle, the actual international discussions dragged on at a much slower, quieter pace. In reality, several weeks of intense, behind-closed-doors diplomatic negotiations have already passed without a single breakthrough. Translating a president's verbal promise into an internationally recognized treaty involves immense mechanical friction. It requires verifying compliance, drafting legal frameworks, and aligning competing national interests. Despite all those weeks of closed-door meetings, these talks have failed to produce any formal treaty. The diplomatic machinery is entirely stalled. The claim of a nearly finalized peace simply does not match the reality on the ground. Over time, the volume of optimistic political statements shoots straight up, while the line representing ratified treaties flatlines at zero. As that gap expands, we live in an illusion of de-escalation, where the public assumes the crisis is resolved, even though military triggers remain active. There is a massive strategic difference between withdrawing a threat and finalizing a peace deal. A withdrawn threat is temporary. A single leader can reinstate it overnight. Right now, beneath the quiet surface, the core issues driving U.S.-Iran relations remain unresolved. Iran remains a sovereign, independent variable, and the physical realities on the ground have not changed. Moving forward, any claim of a foreign policy victory requires a critical eye. Always look for the gap between a politician's confident rhetoric and the actual ink drying on a diplomatic treaty. True de-escalation demands permanent structural change. Until a formal agreement is actually signed, the U.S. and Iran remain trapped in an active, invisible conflict.